Hello, and welcome to this shipbuilding tutorial. My main intention is to try and sort of cover some of the major changes that have been introduced to the game a couple of months ago, or a month ago, I've lost track now. It's going to kind of be little tips and tricks for sort of making life a bit easier. Essentially, even though, this is early access, so it's pretty much creative mode most of the time. As you saw from, if you've gone through the new opening tutorial on the space station, you would have noticed missions and all that. But I'm going to cover pretty much sort of what the biggest change is, the way the blocks work and how they can scale. At the moment here, I've got the standard 1 meter block, but if I press Shift T, it shrinks down to a ½ meter. If I bring up the menu, you can see in the bottom right, there's a little marker to say what scale you're at the moment, and in this case I can go down to a quarter. If I go again, it'll swap all the way up to 8 meters. If you press F1, which is the build options menu, lots of nice little options there. We can cover those a bit later when I'm working on the ship, but one of the things I always do if I start a new game is I change the minimum grid to 0.125. On the maximum grid, you can go all the way up to 32, but it's just, yeah, I don't build big things at the moment. Might do later. So, go back to there, and I shrink the block down, go all the way small, a half, a quarter, and then 1/8. Then you can get some nice little details. And of course, majority of the blocks are now like this. So all of these nice little ones. We do have this new block as well. That's quite handy for building archways. So with certain blocks, not all of them can scale. You'll notice in the bottom right corner, so we've got this little arch here. If I move to select the next item on my hotbar, it changes to a railing, or fence as it's called. But there's no scale next to that. You can't change its scale. Only once it appears, and it's kind of a bit of a process of elimination. Thrusters, shields, pretty much most of these can scale apart from the camera, and of course these jump pads, but a bit of experimentation, you can find what scales or not. Because now of the scaling, certain blocks have been removed, so whole blocks have just been scrunched down to the list. It used to be the 1 meter size, and I think the quarter size next to each other. Again, pipes scaled. Mechanisms can also be scaled, but only go down to a quarter. Logic blocks and switches and these, unfortunately, they are only set to one size, which is a bit frustrating because it would have been nice to have really tiny switches. Yeah, they're going to be fixed size. Lights can be resized, and yeah, I have not actually tested. I don't think they can. Anyway, that's not for this. I have gone off script. Before we get to building, there's a few things I always like to activate to make life a lot easier. So if I press F3, bring up the debug options, I like to click to allow fast move keys. So in the bottom left now, you can see where it says ×1, and it should be on the square brackets. So I can increase the factor of how fast I move. So on 8, you can really fly along. 32 really moves along. Change that back down to 2. Something else I always like to activate is I press F5 for no clip mode, because then I can use control and space to move up and down through everything. It makes life so much more easier. Right, let's move a bit more into open space. ×4. I always like to have some large object work next to it. It gives me a sense of either scale, but also I know where I am moving around. Right, so usual stuff. We've got the starter block, that's not changed. I usually have it there. So it can be rescaled as well, so that's something to make sure of. I don't really think it affects everything overall, but it's yeah, it's handy to know if you just want a tiny starter block. So if I put that one down, and we're at 1 meter scale, but what I want to do is start off at half. And this is where the F1 menu, the build options menu, you can set the placement subgrid. So it's whatever grid you've got the mouse pointed at, and say I want to do half the grid selection. So now you can see that it'll sort of, scoot along just a little bit. So if I switch back to show native grid, you can see it's moving as if it was a quarter of the larger 1 meter block. So it's quite handy. Because of course I want to sit that there, stretch that out. And there we go, we've got that there ready. Quick thing on mirror symmetry. So the mirror tool is pretty much the same as before, except now, you left click to add it, you can press R and switch and add multiple planes of symmetry, which is really quite useful. So if I position that there just for a test, you can see how it does it in all different ways. And if you get fed up with that particular plane, you can move your mouse over it so you can see it highlights, and right click and it gets rid of it. So that's quite handy. And of course, as usual, M will switch off the symmetry briefly or toggle it on and off. Alright, so what we're going to do, I'm just going to build just a little basic frame. Keep it like that. Now, as with all spaceships, we need a chair. Now this could get interesting, so get that there. Put it there. That is, yes, that's fine. That is too low. Right. Always the way. I go down to quarter scale, put that there. Bring that up. Now this is where you can get a little bit of grid weirdness, because I've done a quarter thing there, and it's, if I switch down to 1/8, of course, then you can make up that gap. But we don't want that, so it's going to be a pain, so I'll change that down. And I am putting just a nice little control thing. That's a waste of a block. Just I really need a lot more practice for doing these demonstrations, don't I? Put that there, and that should be okay. It's over to test. Sit down. F4. Yeah, that looks alright. That'll do for now. F, who knows. Alright, so that's a control panel put down. Let's nothing much has changed from before so far. So that's a little ship control block, still the same as before. And we got that in. So we now need a reactor. Have I got it on my list still? No, I haven't. Wait for that message to go away. No, I haven't. Right, let's put you down here. Scale that up. Go back to half grid again. I certainly made life difficult for myself there. So, some power reactors. Some engines. Here we go. At least we got some movement now. Scale down the little thruster. So we need little thrusters just so we can work in different directions. Let's get that on. The controls are still the same for using the hotbar, so you use the scroll wheel to move between each of the items. You hold down shift and it allows you to select between the 3 hotbars, which you can see when you've pressed tab to bring up the block selection menu or the bricks tab. So that is all of those different directions selected. Oh, get to that one. I always like being in the connection menu. So with left click, yes, that's still highlighted there. So let's go into there. And then F. There we go. So I can move all around. Nice little explanation of the controls on the right, sorry, the left. Also on the right, you also notice it says safe zone. That is now for any of the large locations, space stations, or the ring itself. Is an area marked where little pirate ships or anything, any enemy AI won't attack you. So that's quite handy. At times I've just been attacked randomly. Now, something that has changed very recently is if you want to exit your ship. Before, you used to be able to hold down. Now, on the bottom right, if you press F, it'll bring up a little menu. You then use the scroll wheel to change the little arrow next to it, and you hold down F. And you can see a little progress bar. And then you've exited, and then you can just free look around, you know, just in the chair as normal. Then hold down F, and then exit. A few extra steps, but we'll see how things go. Now, it used to be you could press Tab to toggle free look. Now you hold down the middle mouse button to look around. And that is the same for if you go to external view like F4. Right. So that is building a basic sort of spaceship for flying around in. So control stick, a chair, and again I've forgotten what that is. Spaceship computer, there we go. And a spaceship computer, and making sure that that is linked to that way. And then from there, thrusters. Now, you can have the ship without these main thrusters. You just have one of these small ones. These larger ones are for cruise speed, so rapidly flying. In the game now is fuel. So let's bring up a few little blocks on that. Now, fuel scoop. I imagine that's for later on, for, you know, scooping fuel. This is your basic tank, fuel tank. Don't know what that one does yet. Yeah, so you've got two nice types. So one's an inline pipe style of tank, and one's a larger one. So let's drag out a few options. Pipe connector, quite handy. Now these are the sort of blocks where you move, when you've moved your mouse over them. It did I not? Oh, I must have moved it wrong. Anyway, so this is a half meter. Yeah, the blocks are a bit strange. So let's get a fuel tank. Right. So with the fuel tank put down, now I'm going to use pipes to connect the fuel to the reactors over here, because these are what need the fuel. Usually once you've got pipes selected, whatever the mouse is over will actually show you on the right the capacity of the tank, information on it. In this case, if I mouse over the reactor, it tells me how much fuel capacity it has. So let's get some of these down. Oops, get that. Now pipes are one of these sort of blocks which go through other blocks, which is quite handy. Gone too far on that one, so go to there. I'm gonna have, yeah, I'll go all the way through because otherwise it makes it messy. Put that there, and then connect it. So we have that. Let us go to here. If I go to the link tool and then click on the actual reactor to bring up its information, there'll be a nice little tick and then green letters, piping flow sufficient. If I delete that and go back to it, it's now an X, and the message still says piping flow sufficient. So just remember, if there's a tick, it's good, it's connected to a fuel tank, otherwise no. So let's put that back on. And of course, it tells you how much fuel capacity that pipe has, if whatever one you've got selected. Whereas the tank has got 1,266 litres. But again, back to the link tool. And yes, piping flow sufficient. And because I've got mirror on, that is both reactors connected up. I did delete a little block a moment ago, just as I was figuring things out, but let's get that there. No point, but it just makes it look tidy. And yeah, so that is the other thing. That the system is still in progress for the fuel. As you can see, that's a bit weird. Wise. Ah, yes. You got to really, these fuel tank ones. There we go. They're a bit weird. Their hitbox isn't quite, or at least the shape of it is larger than what the brick is, but never mind. So yeah, so that will make sort of build's a lot more interesting. It's sort of trying to put the pipework to integrate the fuel tank with the power reactors, making sure they get enough fuel in them. It's, yeah, adds an extra dynamic. Just for fun, if I add a little cargo pod, bring that up to 1 meter scale, and just add that in as well. So there we go. Once you've got everything going, you can actually just right click and get rid of the little starter block, because that was usually quite good to have there, because it would prevent the ship responding to the gravity of the ring when it's there. You can always add it again if need be. Now, one thing to always do when you've got a ship going, you can bring up tab, select the current entity, and I don't know, Starship 1. Click on Save Blueprint, and then at least this way you can bring it back again, because if you put down a starter block, press F, and you'll get a nice old menu list of all your current ships that you've done before. So if I scroll all the way down, where is it? I've lost it. There it is, Starship 1. Click, and it'll spawn a nice copy of it. If you want to get rid of it though, just put a block on it to change the context to that one. Choose Unspawn Entity, and off it goes. And of course now we can return back to the one we were working with initially. Add a block, remove it. And there we go. That is sort of building the main components. Now, I'm just going to add a few more blocks, and I'm going to cover logic. I want to create just a bit of body so that I can add a canopy. Now, is that the right width? Now, canopies, a lot of the blocks, a lot of different pieces were changed slightly during the last major update. So this used to have a nice connection point. I think it was on one of the edges, and now it's more of in the center of the actual block, or even in this case it just seems off to one side, which is a bit frustrating. So it does make it tricky if you want to position it over something. In this case it seems to respond well to the pointing on the control stick, but you can drag it across and that's quite good. So that seems friendly. Let's sit down and see if it'll work. It does work, excellent. Right. Discovering stuff all the time. Hold on F, exit, and exit again. But that is not exactly how we want it. Because it's fair enough if you wanted to select there, it attaches that canopy to this structure. But what if you wanted to do a mechanical sliding canopy? Similar to that Naboo Starfighter. Let's drag this one out. Actually, I'm going to get my hotbar ready because we're going to do mechanisms. So I'm going to get the switch. Event gate, that's one I'm going to cover in a minute. There's a few interesting ones: docking controller, RGB gate for changing the colors of lights. That one's, yeah, we knew about that one already. Don't need that. Anything else? No. Right, let's get to it. Right, so first things first, let us put it, yeah, let's put it there. Have it slide along the length. I'm going to turn off mirror symmetry and get rid of that on that side. We only want it on one side, and just to keep things balanced. Go over there. Now, this is where a little bit of forward planning may help, because now if I want to get this onto there, you can see if I do put it there, switch it across, slide it there, that's too far. We've now got a situation where it's not actually connected to that rail, which is very frustrating. So let's right click, because what we're going to do is a little bit of cheating. Right click to get rid of the seat, that's not to get rid of that. And what we're going to do is making sure the mouse is on the actual mechanism itself, move across to there, sink down into the ship because we've got F5 for no clipping, and put that there. Now we can get rid of that first one and just extend it up a little bit. Now, when we move the mouse over, we've actually got a way of keeping it on the mechanism, but we're now highlighting a bit more where we want the piece to be. So there, let's get it to there. So from there, we can right click to switch to that, right click, get rid of that. Now if we go to the mechanism itself, it is actually attached to it. There's going to be a little bit more fiddling around. I may have to delete the console. Actually, let's just do that. Makes life easier. That way I can now move that there. And that's there ready. So I can put that back in. Put the chair back in. I'm going to have to switch to half grid. Oh, get right over the top. There we go. Turn on mirror symmetry. Bring that down. Right, and we have now got... That's going to take some editing. So that is the canopy in place. Let's add in some logic so I can get this working. I've dragged from onto the hotbar some of the logic elements from here. So a logic gate. Let's see, event gate, I'll be using that in a moment. Switch, or button and a switch. So let's get those in place. I've turned off mirror symmetry. Let's put that down there. Get the OR. Turn it on briefly just to put these side buttons on. And we get this one on the inside because you want to be able to actually reach and switch that one. So that goes to the mechanical rail, that goes to the OR block, that button goes to the OR block, that one. Come on, there we go. Oh yes, that needs to connect back to there. So now, why are you not working? Yep, connecting things the right way round. There we go. So, there we go. Now, so it does look a little bit cursed sliding like that, but if you add an extra canopy to it there before putting the chairs in there, then it should be fine. So if I go to here, I'm in the ship, and if I hold down the middle mouse button, I should be able to sort of look around and then press F on the object to move things back and forth. Of course, if you're not flying the ship, getting used to that control, you can still do that when you're in the chair. With something that changed a lot is the event gate. It combines together the hotkey and a query gate and I think another one all together, and it's very context sensitive depending on what you've got it linked to. So let's bring one of those out. I'm going to turn off mirror symmetry. Oh yeah, it's turned off. Turn it on. Let's see. Let's put it there for now. Excuse me. So with that in place, let's connect the chair to it, and we can see that its icon has changed. So press F to go into it, and it says that it's listening to a pilot seat, and it'll send a signal on these options. So if the player is seated, it sends a constant signal. When they sit down, it'll just send a little pulse, which can be useful for logic, and when they exit. So what we'll do, actually, I need a sequencer gate, and so with that connected to that, I'm going to get a rotator, shrink that down. It will alter the scale a little bit, and I'm going to place it there. And this is where it is a little bit tricky, trying to figure out what the orientation is. Let's put that down. I'm going to link that to that. So now I can go into it and change its on and off state. And what I want, I'm going to use these flat tabs. Let's go in there. So current angle 0. Yeah. And you can already get an idea of what I'm trying to do. So when it is off, it's at 0, and when it's on, it is at 90. And I want, let's bring the scale down again. I'm going to have to bring this up a bit more, aren't I? Yeah. Whoops, and get that across. So, when the player is seated, connect that to that. If I sit down, where's it gone? Ah, yes, I didn't make it big enough. But if I exit it, it goes there. And if I go into it, it plops down. And the idea is if you build it right, it'll go down. So if you wanted to make a little braces that come over you as you sit down to secure you in place, that's one way of doing it. But so that is when it's connected to there. If you've got a control stick attached to it, icon changes and you get a lot more options to play with. Hotkeys, primary, if you've got it primary fired, you can attach to fire groups, and that alters how things are all just linked together now. And it also means it takes into the next bit of the tutorial is weapons. I know I jumped forwards a little bit, nice little segue. Let's get, so how is, there we go, get that like that. Let's just do a little bit of tidying. Because now, done that too far. Boom. We're going to bring up the weapons. Oh, repair beam, yes. Bumper. Beam, I want laser because I want it to fire. Put that down. Yeah, that'll be fine. Right. Stretch that out. I know it's quarter scale. And then from here, actually, you then take that, drag it to there. From the event query gate to there. Make sure it's primary fire. We want this to be always active. Let's see, let's put it to hotkey group 1. Fire group is exclusive. I don't know what these are. Something to experiment with. So now when you go into there and into there, move around, left click, nothing works. Ah, yes, you activate it. It shows how much I've played with this. Activate it. Let's fire on that. Yeah. There we go. And then deactivate it and they won't fire. So that's quite handy. Exit spaceship control. Oh. So that is the weapons added. Hopefully sort of help in some way with introducing a lot of things. There's just so many things to try and do, and I probably need to do a lot more planning for this one. But I'm going to hopefully do a video covering sort of more of the event logic, providing examples of usage, because there's just so many little neat things you can add to it. If you actually link the shipboard computer to it, got to first of all unlink and then link. Then you get a lot of nice things. So is the ship controlled? Is it boosting? Is it interstellar? Oh yeah, even percentages. So there's a lot of extra neat little things you can do to control logic with, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Let's have a quick check in here. Yeah, you get, oops. Wow, have I frozen? I found a bug. How do I get out of this? Oh. Well, that's a nice thing to end the video on, finding a bug. So yeah, don't link a mechanical rail to a query gate and then try to open it because your character will be frozen in place. But hey, so yeah, let's wrap this one up, and yeah,